The worst part was not that everyone turned to look at me when Professor Calder said there was only one person left without a partner. I had survived worse rooms than that. I had survived scholarship interviews with men who smiled at my shoes before they read my portfolio, critique panels where 3 people used the word delicate as if it meant weak, and 2 years at Saint Adelaide Institute, walking behind girls who had learned early that beauty could be a kind of currency. The worst part was that Celeste Vale looked at me too, and for one sharp second before she remembered who she was supposed to be, her face changed. In private, Celeste looked at me as if I was a place she had finally found after getting lost on purpose. In the stairwell behind the north studio, beneath a window that never fully latched, she had once pressed her forehead to mine and whispered, "I hate how much calmer I feel when you're here." At my apartment, where the heater clicked like an old metronome and the kitchen table was scarred with paint, she had eaten noodles straight from the pot and laughed when I told her she looked illegal in sweatpants. On the roof above the sculpture annex, with the city all black glass and orange light below us, she had kissed my knuckles one by one because my hands were shaking after a failed critique. But in Studio 3, beneath the clean white glare of the presentation lamps, she sat among her circle in a cream blazer, with her hair pinned in a shining twist, and her face settled into the expression everyone at St. Adelaide knew: mild interest, polite distance, untouchable calm. Professor Calder glanced down at his tablet. "It seems we have an uneven number for the installation partnership. Ivy, you'll need to wait while I decide whether to place you with an existing pair or have you complete a solo alternative." The room made a small sound, not loud enough to be called cruel, but too coordinated to be innocent. A shift of shoes, a breathy laugh smothered badly. Someone behind me whispered, "Of course." I kept my eyes on the long tables lined with plaster casts, copper wire, empty frames, and the little paper cards that already had paired names printed on them. Everyone else had been chosen in the casual scramble before the list became official. Friends had grabbed friends. Rivals had negotiated truces. People with famous last names had found each other quickly, like magnets recognizing money. I had stood beside the materials cabinet with my sketchbook clutched against my chest and watched Celeste pretend not to see me. It should not have surprised me. She had been teaching me how invisibility worked for months. Across the room, Marlin leaned toward Celeste and said something with a smile made for front rows and scholarship luncheons. Mara was the kind of girl who treated friendliness like a stage direction. Her laughter always arrived a second too early, bright and sharp, designed to prove she belonged wherever she stood. She touched Celeste's sleeve when she spoke. Celeste did not move away. I told myself not to care. I told myself I had already decided, 3 days earlier, when Celeste had looked through me in the main corridor while walking with the dean's daughter and 2 girls from the donor committee. I had said her name, not loudly, not foolishly, just enough that she could have turned, smiled, made any small human gesture that would have cost her almost nothing. She had paused, met my eyes and said, "Sorry, do you need something?" Like I was a stranger, like the mouth that had murmured against mine 2 nights before did not know how to form my name. Now Professor Calder tapped his pen against the tablet. "Ivy, do you have a preference?" I wanted to laugh, but my body refused to help me. Preference. As if being unwanted was a menu. "I'll do the solo alternative," I said. My voice sounded even. That was the small miracle of growing up poor in expensive rooms. You learned to make your voice behave even when your pride was bleeding under the table. Professor Calder frowned. "The brief requires dialogue between 2 artistic languages. A solo version would be more difficult." "I'm aware." Someone near the windows murmured, "Brave," in a tone that meant pathetic. Then a chair scraped. The sound cut through the room with such clean force that even Mara stopped smiling. Celeste stood. She did not hurry. She did not look around for permission. She crossed the polished concrete floor in her immaculate shoes, passing the table where her friend sat stunned, passing Professor Calder, passing the empty space everyone had left around me as if humiliation might stain. She stopped in front of me and took the paper card from the professor's hand before he could protest. "Ivy can work with me," she said. No one spoke. Professor Calder blinked. "Celeste, you and Mara are already assigned. Then unassign me." Mara's chair scraped now. Celeste, what are you doing? Celeste did not look back. Her attention stayed on me, and for the first time in days, she did not hide the fact that looking at me hurt her. Choosing my partner. The room inhaled all at once. My fingers tightened around my sketchbook. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt the sweet snap of public correction. The kind a girl like me almost never received from a girl like her. Instead, all I felt was the bruise beneath the gesture. She had walked across the room after letting me stand alone. She had reached for me when the silence had become embarrassing enough to threaten her version of herself. And still, some traitorous part of me wanted to step toward her, because my heart remembered her before my pride could stop it. You don't have to, I said quietly. Her jaw moved. I know. That was when I understood that the story did not begin with her walking to me. It began before that, in all the hidden rooms where I had let myself be loved in pieces, and in the hallway where she had decided I was safer, unnamed. 3 months earlier, Celeste Vale had hated me beautifully. 3 months earlier, Celeste Vale had hated me beautifully, at least in public. She became aware of me when I challenged one of her immaculate critiques and called her favorite model elegant, because it avoided consequence. After class, she returned a sketch I had dropped and told me my argument was irritating. I told her hers had been decorative. She smiled as if I had committed a crime she intended to remember. After that, our arguments became a campus sport. She called my work sentimental. I called hers expensive anesthesia. But when a storm flooded the East Studio one night and I stayed behind to save my scholarship model, Celeste came back in a ruined blazer, knelt on the wet floor, and helped me cover the work without once asking for gratitude. When I slipped, she offered her hand. I told her I was not helpless. She said, I didn't say you were. I took her hand anyway, and neither of us let go quickly enough. That was how it began. Not with a confession, but with proof that the girl everyone called untouchable had noticed where I was bleeding and chosen not to make it a spectacle. Then one night, after a donor reception where I had served sparkling water to people who discussed poverty-themed art while wearing bracelets worth a semester, I found her on the roof outside the glass corridor. Her hair had fallen loose from its pins. She held 2 paper cups of coffee, one black, one with too much sugar. How did you know? I asked. She handed me the sweet one. You make a face when you drink black coffee. You watched me drink coffee? Unfortunately. The city below us sounded far away. She leaned on the railing, not looking at me. My mother told Professor Calder you were a charity case with good hands. The words hit in a place I hated admitting was tender. I set the coffee down untouched. Celeste turned quickly. I shouldn't have said it like that. No, it's useful. Now I know what room I'm in. You're in every room you earned. That's easy for you to say. Rooms open when you walk past them. She flinched, and I almost regretted it. Almost. You're right, she said. I looked at her then. Celeste Vale was not a girl people saw apologizing. She looked younger in the wind, stripped of her sharpness. I didn't expect that. Don't get used to it. Too late. I'll be insufferable now. Her mouth curved, then faded. I told her your work was the only piece in the room that didn't beg to be approved. I swallowed. You defended me? I corrected her. There's a difference. Celeste. She finally met my eyes. What? Thank you. The wind pulled a strand of hair across her cheek. I reached without thinking and tucked it behind her ear. The gesture was small, almost nothing. Her whole body stilled under it. Ivy, she said, and my name in her voice had no edge at all. The first kiss happened because neither of us moved away. It was soft, then startled, then not soft at all. Her fingers curled in the sleeve of my thrifted coat. Mine found the railing behind her because the world had tilted. When we separated, she looked at me as if I had ruined a plan she had not admitted making. This is a bad idea, she whispered. Probably. I'm serious. So am I. She kissed me again. For a while, secrecy felt romantic because it felt chosen. We were careful because Saint Adelaide was small and cruelly observant. We met after late studio hours, in the archive room when no one else requested access. on the back staircase where the motion sensor light clicked off if we stood too still. Celeste came to my apartment twice a week and became someone almost no one would have recognized. She took off her earrings and lined them up beside my chipped mug. She sat cross-legged on my rug and argued with me about films she claimed were badly composed, but watched until the end. She fell asleep once with her head on my thigh while I worked on a proposal, and when she woke, embarrassed and disoriented, I pretended not to notice how vulnerable she looked. She learned the loose handle on my bathroom door. I learned that she hated being called brilliant by people who had never looked at the work behind it. She said her mother treated affection like a weakness to be managed. I told her my father loved loudly, but left quietly, which had made me suspicious of both noise and absence. She listened. Really listened. Not like she was collecting material for a future argument, but as if each thing I gave her mattered. Then daylight always came. In public, Celeste stood 3 feet too far away. She answered my comments with the cool amusement of rivals. She never sat beside me unless the room was too crowded to make distance obvious. When Mara joked that Celeste and I should sell tickets to our next critique fight, Celeste smiled and said, "Ivy needs a hobby." Everyone laughed. I laughed too, because at first I understood the bargain. We were not ready. She was watched. I did not want to become a rumor dragged through the school before we had language for ourselves. But weeks became months, and the private tenderness grew heavier because it had nowhere to stand. One Tuesday morning, I found a brass key tucked under my apartment door with a note in Celeste's handwriting. "You work too late. My building has better security. Use it when you need quiet." I held it for a long time, foolishly warmed by the weight of it, because hidden proof can feel like devotion when you are desperate enough. That night, in her apartment high above the river, she burned garlic and called it intensified. I laughed until she did too, barefoot in an old sweatshirt, looking nothing like the girl who ruled studio critiques. Then the laughter thinned. I asked who else got to see that version of her. She said, "You." When I asked if only me was supposed to be enough, her face closed. "Sometimes it feels like I'm not someone you love," I told her. "Just somewhere you go when you're tired of being admired." She said people at school would destroy anything they could name. I said they had already named us rivals because that story was easier for her. She took my hands and promised she only needed time. I believed her because I wanted to, and because wanting can make a bridge look safer than it is. The public denial happened on a Friday in the main corridor, beneath the portraits of former deans who looked down on us like they had personally invented ambition. I had spent the morning installing a mock-up in the gallery annex and had a streak of blue pigment on my wrist. Celeste had kissed that exact spot at dawn before leaving my apartment. She had said, "I'll see you later," with her mouth still warm from mine. By noon, I saw her walking with Mara, Dean Wexley's daughter Annabelle, and 2 students from the showcase committee. They formed the kind of group that made hallways part for them. Celeste wore a black coat over a white dress, her hair loose, her expression effortless. I had promised myself I would not test her in public. I had promised myself I would wait. But she had my key now. She had slept in my bed. She had read the letter my mother wrote when I got my scholarship, and cried quietly, because, she said, no one had ever been proud of her without wanting something back. So when they passed, I said, "Celeste," not loudly, not possessively, just her name. She stopped. The others turned with her. Mara's smile sharpened. Annabelle glanced between us, curious. Celeste looked at me, and I watched recognition move through her face like light behind a locked door. For 1 second, she was the woman who knew how my kettle screamed before it boiled. The woman who had a note from me tucked in her phone case. The woman who had once whispered, "Stay," against my shoulder as if the words scared her. Then fear won. "Sorry," she said, with a polite little crease between her brows. "Do you need something?" Mara laughed. "Maybe she wants another critique fight." I could have exposed her. I could have said, "You left your watch on my nightstand." I could have pulled the brass key from my pocket and held it up like evidence. I could have made the corridor split open around us. Instead, I felt something inside me go very still. "No," I said. "I thought you were someone else." Celeste's face flickered. She had not expected me to protect her from the cruelty she had just handed me. Easy mistake, Mara said, still smiling. Celeste does have one of those faces. Not really, I said. I won't make it again. Then I walked away. I did not cry in the corridor. I did not cry in the bathroom where 2 first-years were fixing lipstick in the mirror. I did not cry when I reached the archive room and locked myself inside among flat files and dust and the smell of old paper. My body sat down on the floor without consulting me. The pigment on my wrist had smudged. I rubbed at it until the skin burned. Celeste called 6 times. Then she texted. I panicked. I'm so sorry. Please answer. Ivy, please. I put my phone face down and looked at the rows of labeled drawers. Absence, I had once said in class, was evidence that someone had the power to remove something. I had never understood how cleanly a person could remove you while still wanting you afterward. For 3 days, I became practical. Practical was easier than devastated. I returned Celeste's key in an envelope through the concierge at her building. I packed the sweatshirt she had left at my apartment and gave it to the front desk in a plain paper bag. I changed my studio schedule so I worked early mornings instead of late nights. I stopped taking the back staircase. When Celeste waited outside the archive on Monday, I walked past her with my headphones in and nothing playing. She caught up near the courtyard. Ivy, stop. I kept walking. Please. That word almost did it. Celeste Vale rarely said please. She used it like a key she hated needing. I stopped beside the empty fountain. Winter had left it dry, scattered with leaves and 2 cigarette butts. You can't do that here, I said. Do what? Sound like you know me. Someone might hear. The color left her face. I deserve that, she said. Good. Then I don't have to explain it. She moved closer, then seemed to remember herself and stopped. I was caught off guard. No, you made a choice. Her lips parted, closed. I know, she said. That was the first honest thing she'd given me since the hallway. And it hurt more than denial. If she had lied, I could have been angrier. If she had claimed misunderstanding, I could have dismissed her. But she knew. She had known while doing it. I can't be your private life anymore, I said. You were never just that. Then why was it so easy to treat me like it? Her eyes brightened, but she did not cry. Celeste had been trained too well for public tears. My mother was in the building. Annabelle reports everything to her. The showcase committee is deciding placements. If they think I'm distracted, if they think you're capable of loving someone they didn't approve, what happens? You don't understand my family. No. But I understand being used as the thing people hide until they need comfort. She flinched. I looked toward the fountain because looking at her made me remember the wrong version. I don't want you to explain fear to me. I want you to understand that fear doesn't make what you did smaller. I do understand. Not yet. A group crossed the courtyard behind us. Celeste stepped back as if distance could rewrite us. I noticed. So did she. I smiled without warmth. There it is. Ivy, don't come to my apartment. Don't wait after class. Don't use professors or projects as excuses to corner me. When you know what you're willing to lose, then maybe we'll have something to discuss. I walked away before she could see what that cost me. Distance did not make me stronger immediately. At first it only made me practical, and then lonely, and then mean to myself in ways no one else could hear. But without Celeste's private tenderness filling every bruise, I began to notice my own life again. My work sharpened. Professor Calder lingered longer at my table. I stopped checking every doorway. I also noticed Noah Kaplan. She was in my materials seminar, quiet in a way that made other people's noise seem wasteful. She worked with found textiles, spoke only when she meant to, and could repair the print lab's ancient machines by listening before touching anything. The first time we fixed the large format printer together, she said it was offended by rich paper. I said most of us were. Her laugh startled me into remembering that I could still be funny without performing survival. Noah began sitting with me at lunch when our schedules matched. She never asked for gossip. She asked what I was building, what I wanted the paper to do, why I always cut toward tension instead of away from it. She made interest feel like a lamp set on the table, not a spotlight in my face. On Thursday, the partnership lists for the final installation were posted. That was the day the title of my life decided to wait in the doorway until I was tired enough to answer it. The class met in Studio 3 after lunch. We were told to choose partners for a preliminary movement exercise before the official installation pairings were finalized. The exercise required trust. One person guided the other blindfolded through a temporary arrangement of objects, describing space without naming anything directly. It was the kind of assignment designed to make confident people theatrical and anxious people resentful. Pairs formed quickly. Noah was absent that day, meeting the textile archive director off campus. Celeste's circle clustered near the windows. Mara immediately hooked an arm through Celeste's and said, "Obviously us." Celeste did not answer. She had been quieter since the hallway, though quiet on Celeste still looked expensive. I stood near the supply shelf, watching people attach themselves to each other. It was ridiculous how old the feeling was. Being the last girl on the playground, the last student chosen for group projects, the scholarship girl everyone praised in private and avoided when status became visible. Adult life changed the shoes and the lighting. It did not always change the wound. Professor Calder clapped once. "Find a partner. If there's an odd number, we'll rotate." There was an odd number. Me. Again. Mara noticed first. She had a gift for smelling weakness before it reached the air. "Ivy can guide the storage rack," she said lightly. A few people laughed. I set my jaw. "I'd rather partner with furniture. It takes criticism better." The laugh shifted toward me this time. Not fully, but enough. Mara's smile thinned. Professor Calder looked over. "We need even pairs." "I can sit this one out," I said. "I've practiced humiliation recently. I'm sure the learning outcome transfers." That got a real laugh from the back of the room. It also made Celeste look up sharply. For a moment, no one moved. The old Celeste would have let the moment pass. Maybe sent me a tortured text later. Maybe touched my wrist in private and said she hated seeing me hurt while still refusing to stand near the wound. This Celeste stood very still beside Mara. I saw the decision reach her before she moved. Then she walked across the room, not halfway. Not close enough to pretend she needed supplies. She crossed the entire studio while everyone watched, her cream blouse catching the afternoon light, her face pale but composed. Mara said her name once, low and warning. Celeste kept walking. She stopped in front of me. "Partner with me," she said. The room tightened. I looked at Mara, then back at Celeste. "You already have one." "No," Celeste said. "I was standing beside someone. That's not the same thing." Mara let out a disbelieving laugh. "Are you serious?" Celeste finally turned to her. "Yes." There was nothing dramatic in her tone. That was what made it land. She was not performing rebellion. She was making a choice she could not pretend away later. Professor Calder cleared his throat. "Celeste, if this is about the showcase list..." "It isn't," she said. I hated that my hands had gone cold. I hated that some part of me wanted to believe this single walk could cover the distance of all the steps she had not taken before. But growth, I was learning, was not punishing someone forever. It was refusing to let one brave moment buy back what consistent cowardice had spent. "No," I said. Celeste's face changed. The room noticed that too. I kept my voice low enough that she had to listen rather than receive a scene. "You don't get to decide I'm visible because people are watching the wrong kind of cruelty." She swallowed. "I know. Do you?" "I'm trying to." That answer was not enough, but it was not nothing. Professor Calder, perhaps sensing that the educational value of blindfolded movement had been overtaken by human disaster, said, "We'll rotate groups of 3. Ivy, Celeste, Mara. Start with Station 1. Mara's expression turned poisonous. Wonderful. The exercise was a disaster in the way only controlled exercises can be. Mara insisted on guiding first and treated the blindfold like a crown. Celeste tied it around her eyes with careful hands while I watched from 2 feet away, my body too aware of Celeste's nearness and too angry at itself for caring. "Left," Mara said when it was my turn to be blindfolded. "No, your other left. Honestly, Ivy." I stepped into a foam block hard enough to bruise my shin. "Mara," Celeste said. "What?" She moved wrong. I reached for the blindfold. I'm done. Celeste caught my wrist, then released it instantly, as if remembering she had lost the right to touch first. May I guide you? She asked. The question unsettled me more than her hand would have. It was public. It was small. It gave me control. I should have refused. Instead, I lowered my hand. Fine. Her voice changed when she guided me. Not softer enough for everyone to understand, but softer enough for me to recognize. 3 steps forward. The floor changes under your right foot. Don't rush. There's a hanging frame near your shoulder. Tilt left. Good. Now pause. Noah would have made a joke. Mara would have made me feel clumsy. Celeste described the room like she believed I deserved to move through it safely. My anger did not disappear. It gained a second emotion beside it, which was worse. Why are you doing this? I asked, blindfolded, because darkness made courage easier. She took too long to answer. Because I should have done it sooner. That isn't an answer. Because I don't want to be someone who only reaches for you when no one can see. Around us, classmates shifted. They could hear pieces. Not enough to know, perhaps, but enough to speculate. Celeste knew that. She still said it. I removed the blindfold. Her face was close, guarded but not blank. Behind her, Mara looked like she had swallowed glass. A little late for not wanting that, I said. Yes, Celeste said. It is. The lunch scene happened the next day, and it did not begin as a scene at all. It began with soup. The cafeteria at Saint Adelaide was too elegant to be called a cafeteria by people who had never needed meal vouchers, but everyone called it that anyway. It had tall windows overlooking the sculpture lawn, marble counters, and salads that cost more than groceries. I usually brought food from home and ate near the far wall where the noise softened. Since the hallway, I had started eating with Noah when our schedules matched. That day she arrived with 2 paper bowls and placed one in front of me. Tomato basil, she said. Before you argue, the cashier gave me 2 because I fixed the printer again. I'm basically staff clergy now. You bribed me with soup. I prefer rescued you from institutional hunger. I took the spoon. Your heroism is noted. Noah sat across from me, wearing a rust-colored sweater with a pulled thread at the cuff. She looked tired but pleased. The archive director loved your idea about suspended letters. My idea? I mentioned it, with credit, she added, pointing the spoon at me. Relax. I don't steal from women I plan to impress. I nearly dropped my spoon. Noah's smile became a little nervous, which made it sweeter. Too direct? A little. Good. I was going for memorable, not subtle. The cafeteria noise seemed to bend around us. Not stop, not dramatically. Life did not care that my skin had warmed under my sweater. Across the room, Celeste sat with Mara, Annabelle, and 2 others from the showcase committee. I knew she was there because my body had learned her location before my eyes admitted it. I did not look. Noah leaned back. I wanted to ask you something, and I don't want it to be weird. So naturally, I'm asking while you're holding soup. Soup is a stabilizing influence. Exactly. There's an opening at the Textile Archive next Friday. Small show, not a school thing. No committee performance. Would you come with me? As a date. There it was. Not a weapon. Not a performance. Not a hand grabbed across a room to prove something to someone else. A question placed between us carefully, with room around it. I looked at Noah. Really looked. Her confidence did not erase her vulnerability. It made space for it. She liked me. Not as a rumor. Not as a secret challenge. Me, with my stained cuffs and sharp comments, and habit of overworking, until the janitors gave me pitying looks. I don't know if I'm ready, I said honestly. Noah nodded once. No flinch of wounded pride. No quick retreat into humor. That's fair. But I think I want to be asked. Her expression warmed. That is also fair. And I think I want to go, if we can call it an evening. Not because I don't respect what you're asking, because I do, but because I'm still figuring out what parts of me are available without being unfair to you. Noah looked at me for a long moment, then smiled. An evening with honest disclaimers. Very Saint Adelaide. I laughed. Terrible branding. We'll workshop it. That was when Celeste stood. She did not stride over like a jealous heroine in a cheap play. She gathered her tray, said something to Mara, and started toward the exit. But halfway there, she stopped beside our table. Her face was composed. Her hand around the tray was not. One knuckle had gone white. "Ivy," she said. Noah glanced between us. She was too perceptive not to notice the shape of the air. I set down my spoon. "Celeste." The use of her name in public landed visibly. A week earlier, she had made that impossible. Now everyone within 3 tables looked up. Celeste's gaze flicked to Noah, then returned to me. "Can we talk after seminar?" "About the installation?" "No." Mara was watching from across the cafeteria with open disbelief. Annabelle had already leaned toward someone, mouth moving. I lifted my chin. "Then say what it's about." Celeste's control cracked at the edge. Not enough for strangers, perhaps, but enough for me. Us. The table beside ours stopped pretending not to listen. Noah did not shrink. She did not smirk. She simply folded her hands around her soup and waited like an adult. I felt anger rise, clean and overdue. "There wasn't an us when I said your name in the hallway." Celeste closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, she did not look away from the room. "There was. I lied." The cafeteria changed. It was subtle at first, a ripple of attention, then a wave. Mara stood so quickly her chair bumped the wall. "Celeste," she hissed. Celeste did not turn. "I lied because I was afraid of what people would say." "That doesn't make it less cruel." My face burned. This was what I had wanted, wasn't it? Truth in daylight, a correction, a public refusal to keep me erased. But the timing stung. She had not broken because I was hurt. She had broken because Noah had asked me out. "Don't," I said quietly. Celeste's mouth tightened. "Don't what?" "Don't turn honesty into a reaction." Her eyes searched mine. I stood, slowly enough that the chair did not scrape. "You don't get to hide me when I want you, and reveal me when you're scared someone else might." Noah looked down, giving us privacy that the room refused. Celeste absorbed the words like a physical blow. "You're right. I know. I still need to talk to you. Not here. Not because of Noah. Because I should have before." Noah finally spoke. "For what it's worth, I didn't ask Ivy out to become a lesson for anyone." Celeste looked at her, and to her credit, she did not sharpen. "I know. I'm sorry." Noah nodded. "Good. Don't make me regret being graceful. It's new for me." A surprised sound escaped me. Celeste almost smiled, then seemed to realize she had no right to enjoy the moment. "After seminar," Celeste said again, quieter. "If you choose." If you choose. The words mattered. Not enough to fix anything, but enough to keep me from walking away immediately. "I'll decide after seminar," I said. She accepted that with a small nod and left the cafeteria under the full weight of everyone she had feared. Mara followed her out, furious. Annabelle stayed behind and whispered like a match being struck. I sat down. My soup had gone cold. Noah pushed her napkin toward me. That looked expensive. What did? Whatever it cost her to say that. I stared at the table. "It doesn't mean I owe her anything." "No," Noah said. "It means now you get to decide with more information. That's different." I looked at her, grateful and sorry in the same breath. "You're being very decent about this." "Don't spread it around. I have a reputation for being mildly difficult." She softened. "I like you, Ivy. I can like you, and still not want you confused into me." The kindness of that nearly undid me. "I don't want to use you to feel chosen." "Then don't. Come next Friday if you want the archive and my company. Don't come if you're trying to prove something to Celeste." That's annoyingly healthy. I contain multitudes. After seminar, I found Celeste in the sculpture garden. Not the private stairwell, not the archive, not any of the hidden places that had once made us feel safe. She stood near the bronze figure everyone called the saint. Though no one knew who it represented, it had one hand extended and one hand held against its own chest, as if forever undecided between offering and self-protection. "Mara resigned from our installation group," Celeste said when I approached. That was fast. "She said she refuses to be associated with drama." Mara saying that is performance art. Celeste's mouth twitched, then the humor faded. Annabelle texted my mother. There it was, consequence, arriving with polished shoes. What did your mother say? That I was embarrassing myself over a scholarship student with a grudge. The sentence landed, but not as hard as it might have weeks ago. Maybe because Celeste looked furious on my behalf instead of ashamed of being attached to me. And what did you say? I asked. That your name is Ivy Morrow. That your work is better than half the donor-backed pieces she pretends to admire. That if she uses the word scholarship like an insult again, I will withdraw from her showcase committee and make sure the student board knows why. I stared at her. She looked at the statue. It was not elegant. Good. She threatened to call Professor Calder. Did she? Probably. I turned my phone off. I let out a breath that was almost laughter. Celeste Vale turned her phone off? A historic sacrifice. There may be plaques. For a moment, there we were again, close to the rhythm that had made me believe in us. Then the memory of the hallway stepped between us. Celeste felt it too. I need to say this badly, she said. That's not encouraging. I know, but if I try to say it well, I'll make it sound cleaner than it is. She folded her arms, then unfolded them as if rejecting the shield. I was ashamed, not of you, of wanting something I couldn't control, of needing someone who didn't fit the version of myself everyone rewards, of being seen wanting at all. But I understand that from your side, it looked the same as being ashamed of you, and it hurt you the same way. I listened. The garden smelled like wet stone and early spring soil. Students crossed the paths around us, glancing, whispering, learning new roots for our names. I thought if I kept us private, I was protecting us, she continued. But I was protecting myself. You paid for it. I wanted to forgive her. The want was there, immediate and dangerous. I did not trust it. What changed? I asked. And don't say lunch. She nodded. The hallway changed it. Lunch exposed it. Explain. When you said you thought I was someone else, I realized you had done for me what I refused to do for you. You protected me in public even while I was hurting you. Her voice roughened. I have never felt smaller than I did watching you walk away with my cowardice in your hands. I looked at the statue's offered hand. And Noah? Celeste did not pretend not to understand. I was jealous. Ugly, immediate, humiliatingly obvious jealousy. But that isn't why I told the truth. It's why I understood the punishment I had invented for myself. I wanted the privilege of being chosen by you, while making sure no one saw me choose back. When Noah asked you out with more respect than I had shown you, I realized she wasn't taking something from me. She was offering you something I had refused to give. That was new, not the apology, but the shape of it. It did not ask me to soothe her. I meant what I said, I told her. I don't want to be claimed because you're scared. I know. And I don't know if I can trust you just because you said the right things once. You shouldn't. Those two words loosened something in me because she did not fight them. What do you want then? I asked. Celeste looked at me, and this time the vulnerability did not arrive hidden in darkness or wind. It stood in the garden with people passing behind us. A chance to become someone you could trust again. Not a guarantee. Not forgiveness today. A chance to do it properly, even if it takes longer than I want. I hated how adult that sounded. I also loved her for it, which annoyed me. I have an evening with Noah next Friday, I said. Pain crossed her face. She did not look away. Okay. Okay. I don't get to object. No, you don't. Do you want to go? I thought about Noah's rust sweater, her steady hands, her refusal to turn my confusion into opportunity. Yes, I think I do. Celeste nodded once. Then I hope she treats you well. That sounded like it nearly killed you. It did some damage. A laugh escaped me, unwilling but real. Celeste's face softened, then she carefully did nothing with it. No reaching, no stepping closer. Space offered without punishment. I'll see you in class, she said. Will you know me? Her expression tightened with deserved shame. Yes. Even when your friends are there? Yes? Even if your mother calls? Especially then. I nodded. Then we'll start there. Starting there meant awkwardness. Real change often does. It was less cinematic than people hoped. Celeste did not transform overnight into a fearless romantic saint. She still paused before sitting beside me the next morning in lecture. I saw the old calculation flicker. Who would notice? What would they say? Then she sat anyway, setting her notebook beside mine as if the scrape of chair legs had not just rearranged half the room. Mara walked in, saw us, and smiled like a knife. Bold seating chart. Celeste uncapped her pen. Good morning, Mara. Is this an apology tour or a breakdown? I expected Celeste to handle it. Instead, I spoke first. If you're confused, we can make you a diagram. A boy in the back coughed over a laugh. Mara's eyes narrowed. Celeste looked at me with brief, private delight, then turned back to the front before it became a performance. That restraint mattered. She did not use my defense as permission to touch me. She did not turn our fragile truce into a show. Professor Calder arrived with the revised partnership list. Celeste and I were officially paired for the final installation. Mara had joined Annabelle's group, which meant she would have access to the donor committee in several ways to make our lives difficult. I expected Celeste to be angry. She looked almost relieved. Why are you calm? I whispered. Mara is easier to predict when she believes she's winning. That's ominous. It's strategic. You say that about ominous things. Her mouth curved, often accurately. Our installation concept began as an argument, which felt appropriate. The brief asked for a collaboration on threshold spaces. I wanted to build a narrow corridor of suspended paper panels, each etched with fragments of overheard public language. Celeste wanted mirrored frames that forced viewers to see themselves while navigating the text. 3 months earlier, we would have fought to win. Now we fought to understand what the other person was protecting. Mirrors make it too obvious, I said in the studio after class. People love feeling accused by expensive surfaces. It lets them leave unchanged but aesthetically wounded. Celeste leaned over the table, sleeves rolled to her elbows. And paper alone lets them pity the fragility of the subject instead of recognizing their part in it. You think my work invites pity? I think your work sometimes gives cruel people a beautiful way to feel forgiven. That stopped me. She looked startled by her own honesty. I don't mean... No, you're right. I stared at the sketches. I hate that. But you're right. Celeste's hand moved as if she wanted to touch my shoulder, then settled beside a pencil instead. We could use scratched steel, not clear enough for clean reflection, not soft enough for pity. And paper behind it, I said slowly, visible through cuts. You have to move to read it. A public surface with private text underneath. Our eyes met over the table. This time the look changed the work. The project gave us a place to put what we could not yet hold. We built panels that required cooperation without pretending cooperation was easy. Celeste sourced steel from a fabricator who owed her mother a favor, then insisted my name go first on all budget communications, because the concept had begun with my paper studies. I argued that alphabetical order was cleaner. She looked at me and said, "Do not make humility another hiding place." I hated that enough to obey. Friday came with cold sunlight, and my evening with Noah. Celeste saw me near the lockers before I left. Jealousy crossed her face, quick and human, but she only said, "You look lovely." Then, after a small battle with herself, she added that the textile archive had terrible heating, and I should wear my coat. It was such an awkward attempt not to claim me that I smiled despite myself. Noah met me under a green awning outside the archive. The evening was good in a way that did not ask to become proof against anyone. We walked through rooms of quilts, banners, work aprons, wedding veils, protest cloths, and names stitched by hands almost erased from history. Afterward, over tea, I told her enough about Celeste to make my confusion honest. Noah did not turn herself into the better option. She only said, "Choose yourself first. Then whoever fits that choice gets very lucky." When she hugged me goodbye, it was warm and uncharged enough to make me grateful. The real test came at the Saint Adelaide Spring Salon, a formal event where students displayed works in progress for donors, trustees, and alumni who liked the idea of young artists, as long as we wore black and thanked them properly. Celeste's mother attended in a silver suit, her hair cut with mathematical severity. I recognized her immediately from portraits and from the way people adjusted around her. Vivian Vale did not enter rooms. Rooms confessed themselves inadequate. Our installation stood near the center gallery, half complete but functional. 7 steel panels arranged in a broken corridor, each with cuts revealing paper beneath. Viewers had to move slowly, catching fragments of text through narrow openings. Do you need something? Easy mistake. She's just intense. Don't make it dramatic. Who told you you belonged here? Some phrases came from my life, some from Celeste's, some from overheard institutional cruelty. Together they made a room of almost recognition. Celeste arrived beside me in a black dress with no jewelry except small pearl earrings. She looked untouchable until her hand brushed mine behind the panel, hidden from most of the room, but not because she was hiding me. A question. I turned my palm. She linked one finger with mine for 2 seconds, then let go before anyone could call it display. Ready? She asked. No. Good. Me neither. The honesty steadied me. For an hour, we spoke to donors. Celeste did not dominate. When someone directed technical questions to her, she redirected them to me. When a trustee praised the steel as the real strength of the piece, Celeste said, the steel is structure. Ivy's paper is the wound. Without it, the structure is just expensive posture. I nearly laughed into my water. Then Vivian Vale approached with Mara and Annabelle trailing like decorative knives. Celeste, Vivian said. Impressive placement. Celeste's shoulders changed, not dramatically, but enough that I saw the daughter appear beneath the queen. Mother. Vivian looked at me. Her smile was not rude. It was worse, perfectly measured. And you must be Ivy Morrow. I am. Your work has caused quite a stir. The good kind, I hope. That depends on whether one values disturbance. Her eyes moved to the panels. Students often mistake personal grievance for depth. Celeste inhaled beside me. I spoke before she could. Sometimes institutions mistake discomfort for lack of discipline. Mara's mouth parted. Annabelle looked thrilled to witness bloodsport. Vivian's smile cooled. Confidence is useful when supported by proportion. So is criticism. Celeste made a tiny sound that might have been panic or pride. Vivian turned to her. I see what you meant. She is not delicate. The sentence should have been insulting. Somehow, from Vivian, it sounded like a reluctant adjustment. No, Celeste said. She isn't. Mara stepped in, voice sweet. It's such an intimate piece. People are wondering how much of it comes from life. There it was, the trap, polished and placed at our feet. If Celeste dodged, I would be hidden again. If she overcorrected, I would become a spectacle. I looked at her and waited, not because I needed saving, but because this answer belonged to the part of the story she had broken. Celeste set down her glass. Much of it comes from life. That's why it works. Mara's smile sharpened. So the hallway phrase is autobiographical. Do you need something? Such a specific line. A few nearby conversations faded. Celeste looked at the panel where the words appeared through a diagonal cut. When she spoke, her voice carried. Not loud. Clear. I said that to Ivy in the main corridor when she used my name in front of people whose opinions I was afraid of. I pretended not to know her. It was cruel. The piece includes it because private cowardice becomes public architecture when no one names it. The gallery went quiet, in a way no classroom ever had. I could feel people looking at me. But this time, I did not feel displayed alone. Celeste had not dragged me into the light to prove she could. She had stepped into the ugliness herself. Vivian's face became unreadable. Celeste. Celeste turned to her mother. I won't be available for the donor dinner tonight. Ivy and I are finishing the installation revisions. The trustees expect you. Then they will practice disappointment. Mara let out a small laugh of disbelief. You're throwing away the showcase chair over this? Celeste looked at her. No, I'm refusing to keep a chair that requires me to be a coward. My eyes burned. I looked down at the floor until I could trust myself again. Vivian studied her daughter for a long time. You realize there will be consequences. Yes. And you, Vivian said, turning to me. Do you encourage this? The old me might have rushed to defend myself, to prove I had not seduced a legacy daughter into rebellion. The new me felt the fear and did not let it choose. Celeste makes her own decisions, I said. So do I. Something like approval, faint and unwilling, passed through Vivian's eyes. How inconvenient. Often, I said. Celeste laughed once, too softly for most people, but I heard it. The aftermath was not immediate bliss. Celeste did lose the showcase committee chair. Annabelle's mother replaced her with someone bland and obedient. Mara told anyone who listened that Celeste had staged the confession for artistic credibility. Vivian Vale sent one email to Celeste with no greeting, 3 paragraphs about family reputation, and a final line that read, "You have inherited your father's appetite for impractical attachments." Celeste showed it to me in the studio at midnight, not because she wanted pity, but because hiding consequences had been part of the old pattern. "Does it hurt?" I asked. She sat on the floor beside our unfinished panels, shoes off, dress replaced by paint-stained trousers. Yes, less than I expected, more than I want to admit. I nodded. I spent years thinking her disappointment would kill me, Celeste said. It turns out it mostly annoys me and makes me want soup. Growth is strange. Tomato basil? I smiled. Careful. That's Noah's territory. Jealousy flashed, quick and human, then Celeste breathed through it. Right, sorry. You can feel things. You just can't turn them into cages. She looked at me. I'm learning. We worked until after 2. The building emptied around us. At some point, Celeste cut her finger on a steel edge and tried to hide it with a paper towel. I caught her wrist. Sit down, I said. It's nothing. You bleed like a repressed heiress. Sit. She obeyed, which was satisfying. I cleaned the cut at the sink while she watched my face. The intimacy was painfully familiar, but different now because the door was open. Anyone could have passed. No one did. The possibility mattered. I wanted to kiss you tonight, she said quietly. My hand paused on the bandage. At the salon, she continued, after my mother walked away, I wanted to kiss you because I was proud and scared, and because you looked at me like maybe I hadn't ruined everything forever. But I didn't want to make a public confession into a demand. I wrapped the bandage around her finger. Thank you, for not. Can I ask now? The studio lights hummed above us. The panel stood behind her, full of cut-open words. 3 months of wanting moved through me, but it no longer moved alone. My anger was there, my caution, my self-respect, newly awake and still learning its own weight. No, I said. Celeste went still, but she did not retreat into ice. Okay. I secured the bandage. Not because I don't want to. Because if I kiss you tonight, I won't know whether I'm rewarding courage, forgiving pain, or just missing you. I need those to become separate before I choose. She closed her eyes for a second. Okay, she said again, rougher. Can you live with that? I can learn. That was the night I began trusting her again. Not because she got what she wanted, but because she stayed gentle when she didn't. The weeks before the final showcase changed us in practical ways. We did not resume our old secret romance. We built something slower and less intoxicating, which made it harder to dismiss. Celeste walked with me between classes. Sometimes we talked about the project. Sometimes we talked about nothing important. She stopped letting her circle make jokes at my expense. Not with dramatic speeches every time, but with clear interruptions. When Mara said, Ivy's whole aesthetic is wounded scholarship girl, Celeste replied, Mara, your whole aesthetic is borrowed confidence. Should we continue? Mara did not. When Annabelle asked whether we were officially a thing now, Celeste said, Ivy is not a thing, and left it there. I corrected rumors too. Not because Celeste needed protection, but because I was tired of letting other people write my life. When someone in the print lab asked if Celeste had used her influence to force Professor Calder into our pairing, I said, Professor Calder can barely be influenced into replacing printer toner. Try again. When a first year nervously asked whether dating a Vale was as terrifying as it sounded, I told her I was not dating anyone at the moment. And Celeste, who was cutting paper beside me, did not contradict me. Her hand tightened on the blade, but she kept cutting. Noah became my friend in the careful way honest people do after almost becoming more. She came by the studio sometimes with tea and opinions. Celeste was polite to her, then gradually real. The first time Noah made Celeste laugh by comparing donor language to haunted wallpaper, Celeste looked almost offended at herself. I enjoyed that. One afternoon, Noah pulled me aside near the lockers. "You look better," she said. "Do I?" "Not happier exactly. More occupied by yourself." That might be the nicest thing anyone said to me. I'm very wise. Also, your left panel is leaning. Less nice. She bumped my shoulder. For what it's worth, I think she's trying in a way that costs her. I looked through the studio window where Celeste was arguing with a level and losing. I know. And you? I'm trying to make sure forgiveness doesn't become another way of abandoning myself. Noah's expression softened. That is annoyingly healthy. I learned from a difficult woman. Good. My influence spreads. The final emotional break came 2 nights before the showcase, not during an argument, but during a failure. One of our steel panels warped after a hinge slipped. It crashed hard enough to tear 2 paper layers and dent the base. For 30 seconds, neither Celeste nor I moved. Then Celeste said, very quietly, "My mother offered me the committee chair back if I separated my name from the piece." I turned from the broken panel. She stared at the damage. "She said your work had become politically inconvenient and emotionally messy. She said I could still exhibit independently. Prime placement, trustee dinner, press photograph, clean narrative." The room seemed to narrow. "When?" "This morning." "You didn't tell me." "No." The old wound opened its eyes. Celeste looked at me quickly. Not because I was considering it. Because I knew you would wonder if I was, and I couldn't bear seeing that on your face before I knew how to prove I wasn't. "So, you hid it," she winced. "Yes, there it was. Not the same offense, but the same instinct wearing new clothes. A secret kept to manage my reaction. My anger rose because progress did not erase danger. It made danger more disappointing." "Celeste, I know. I realized it too late." "Too late is becoming a theme." She nodded, accepting the hit. "I declined in writing. Copied Calder. Copied the student board. Copied my mother, obviously. I said the work remains under both names, or not at all. That doesn't fix the hiding." "No, it fixes the offer. The hiding I have to answer for separately." That stopped me. She had learned enough not to bundle courage and cowardice into one receipt. I walked to the torn paper and touched the ripped edge. "I don't want a relationship where I have to wait for you to reveal what almost happened after you've already decided how I should feel. I don't either. Then stop making fear look like protection." Her eyes filled this time. No public corridor. No audience. Just us and the damaged thing we had built. I'm sorry. I was ashamed that the offer existed. Ashamed that part of me, the train part, knew exactly how easy it would be to accept. Not because I wanted to, because the path was so familiar I could feel my body recognizing it. I understood that too well, which made me less angry and more careful. Familiar isn't destiny. No, but I need to tell you when familiar reaches for me. Not after I win against it. During? Yes. She wiped her cheek with the heel of her hand, irritated by the tear. I hate this. Being emotionally accountable? Deeply. You'll survive. Will we? The question hung there, honest and unadorned. I looked at the broken panel. Help me fix this. Then we'll talk. We worked until dawn. Repair became conversation without replacing it. We removed the warped hinge, recut 2 strips of paper, reinforced the base with a bracket Celeste found in the storage cage. At sunrise, the panel stood again, visibly mended. The repair line showed if you knew where to look. I decided I liked it better that way. When the work was done, we sat on the floor facing it, shoulders almost touching. I don't want to go back to how we were, I said. Celeste's face tightened. I know. No, listen. I don't want secret stairwells and apology flowers and pretending public cruelty can be balanced by private tenderness. But I don't want to erase everything either. There were real things inside the wrong shape. She nodded slowly. I want to try, I said. Not resume. Try. Dates in places with doors unlocked. Conversations before decisions. Affection that doesn't vanish around witnesses. And if you fail, I need you to tell me before I have to discover the wound by stepping into it. Celeste's hands curled around each other. I can do that. Don't promise because you're relieved. I'm promising because the alternative is becoming someone I don't respect. Losing you would be terrible. Keeping you by staying cowardly would be worse. I believed her. Not completely, not blindly. Enough to stand. Then ask me, I said. She stood too. Ask you what? What you wanted to ask in the studio after the salon. Understanding moved across her face slowly, as if she did not trust it. May I kiss you? I looked at the mended panel, at the cut-open words, at the line where damage had become part of the structure. Then I looked back at her. Yes. This kiss was not like the first one on the roof. It was not stolen from weather or hidden by darkness. It was tired, careful, salt at the edge because she had cried, and I almost had. Her hands came to my waist and stopped there, waiting. Mine rose to her face. The sun entered the studio in pale strips, touching the floor around us. Somewhere in the building, pipes clanged awake. The day found us, and neither of us moved away. The showcase opened 2 nights later. Our installation kept both names, Ivy Morrow and Celeste Vale, printed side by side on the wall card. My name first, because Celeste had won that argument by refusing to argue and simply submitting the final form that way. I pretended to be annoyed. I was not. People came through the steel corridor slowly. Some laughed uncomfortably at the phrases. Some grew quiet. One older woman stood before the panel with, "Do you need something?" cut into its surface and whispered, "Oh," as if remembering a version of herself she had abandoned. Professor Calder told us the piece had received the jury mention for spatial narrative. Vivienne Vale attended, stood in front of the work for 7 full minutes, and then approached us. "The repair line improves it," she said. Celeste blinked. "Thank you." Vivienne looked at me. "Miss Morrow, you are inconveniently talented. I've been called worse. I'm sure." Her gaze shifted to our hands. We were not holding them. Not yet. "Celeste has always been stubborn. I see she has found someone who makes that quality less ornamental." Celeste stiffened. "Mother. Relax. That was almost approval." Vivienne lifted her chin toward the panels. "Don't let the trustees make it softer for touring. They'll try." Then she left us standing there, confused and oddly blessed by the terrifying weather system that had produced Celeste Vale. Noah came near the end of the night with Mrs. Alvarez from the textile archive. She hugged me, admired the paper cuts, and told Celeste the steel was less haunted wallpaper than expected, which Celeste accepted with solemn gratitude. When Noah left, she squeezed my hand and said, "Good choice, if it keeps being one." "It will," I said. Celeste heard. She did not beam. She did something better. She looked relieved and responsible at once. After the crowd thinned, Professor Calder asked for photographs of the artists beside their work. Cameras made me stiff. Public affection still made Celeste careful, but careful no longer meant afraid of me. We stood side by side in front of the central panel. The photographer lifted the camera. "Closer," he said. "You two look like you're negotiating a treaty." "We often are," I muttered. Celeste laughed and reached for my hand. Not dramatically. Not as announcement. Not because Mara was nearby, though she was. Not because Noah watched, though she did. Celeste simply looked at me first, a question in the slight lift of her brow. I answered by opening my fingers. Her hand slid into mine. The camera clicked. There was no gasp, no thunderclap, no instant transformation of the world. A few people noticed. One person whispered. Mara looked away. Vivienne pretended not to see, and absolutely saw. The floor remained beneath us. The ceiling did not fall. Celeste's palm was warm, and this time warmth did not require hiding to survive. Later, after the awards and polite conversations and the strange exhaustion of being perceived, Celeste and I walked to the old classroom where the partner exercise had begun. Studio 3 was empty, lit only by the emergency lights and the city glow through high windows. The floor had been cleaned. The tables reset. No evidence remained of the day I had stood without a partner except what we carried. Celeste stopped near the place where I had held my sketchbook too tightly, and everyone had waited to see how unwanted I would become. "I think about that afternoon," she said. "So do I." Walking across the room was the first brave thing I did too late. I leaned against the table. It mattered. It just didn't solve everything. I know. She looked around the studio. I used to think being chosen publicly meant being trapped by what people thought of the choice. And now? She stepped closer, leaving enough space for me to decide whether to close it. Now I think hiding was the trap. I studied her face. The class queen, the girl with rooms orbiting her. The woman who had hurt me because fear spoke louder than love. She was still beautiful in the way people wrote about too easily. But what moved me now was not beauty. It was the effort beneath it. The willingness to stand in rooms that might not adore her. The way she had begun asking instead of assuming. The way she had let me be angry without turning my anger into proof that loving me was too hard. "I don't want to be your lesson," I said. "You're not. Or your rebellion. No. Or the person you choose only when choosing me makes you feel brave." Celeste shook her head. "You're the person I love. Bravery is just what loving you requires from me, because I was cowardly for too long." I let the words enter carefully. They did not fix everything. That was why I trusted them more. They did not try to. "I love you too," I said. Her eyes shone. She did not move until I reached for her. We kissed in the empty classroom, not because no one could see us, but because no one needed to. The difference felt enormous. Privacy without shame. Quiet without erasure. When I pulled back, she rested her forehead against mine. "Will you have dinner with me tomorrow?" she asked. "Somewhere painfully public with mediocre lighting and menus sticky enough to humble us both." I smiled. "That sounds romantic." "I am adapting to your standards. My standards include not burning garlic." Cruel callback. Accurate callback. She laughed, and the sound filled the classroom that had once held my humiliation. I thought of the partner card, the blindfold, the lunch table, Noah's honest invitation, Vivian's cold approval, the mended steel. I thought of the version of myself who had believed that being loved in secret was still proof enough if the kisses were tender. I wanted to go back and take that girl's face in my hands, not to scold her, to thank her for surviving until I could become someone who knew the difference between being desired and being valued. Celeste picked up my coat from the table and held it open for me with exaggerated seriousness. "Are you escorting me now?" I asked. "I'm offering warmth, very different. And if I refuse, then I will be cold beside you in solidarity." I slipped into the coat. Dramatic. "I've been influenced." We left the studio together. In the corridor, beneath the portraits of former deans, Celeste reached for my hand again. She did it casually enough that anyone watching might have mistaken it for ease, but I felt the question inside the gesture. I answered by lacing our fingers. Halfway down the hall, a group of students from the showcase passed us. One of them smiled. Another looked surprised. No one fainted. No one saved us or ruined us. The world simply made room because we moved through it, as if we belonged. At the main doors, rain had begun tapping against the glass. Celeste looked at it, then at me. "I don't have an umbrella," she said. "The great Celeste Vale? Unprepared? Do not tell anyone. My reputation is fragile." "I thought you were done living for reputation." "I'm allowed to preserve a little mystique." I laughed and pulled the hood of my coat over my head. She stepped close, not hiding, just sharing the narrow shelter. We ran down the steps together into the rain, clumsy and bright with it, our hands locked between us. By the time we reached the street, my shoes were wet. Her hair had escaped its careful pins, and neither of us looked like the girls the school had tried to name. At the corner, under the blurred gold of a traffic light, Celeste stopped and turned to me. People moved around us with umbrellas and impatient shoulders. Cars hissed through puddles. The city did not pause for our ending, which made it feel more real. "Ivy," she said. I looked at her, waiting. She smiled. Rain on her eyelashes, no audience she needed, and none she feared. "Do you need something?" The old sentence passed between us, stripped of its cruelty, remade by the softness in her voice. I squeezed her hand. "Yes." "What?" I stepped closer beneath the small shelter of my hood, close enough that the rain found both of us anyway. "Walk with me." Celeste's smile changed into something quiet and certain. "Always," she said. And this time, because the whole wet, shining street could hear or not hear, as it pleased, I believed her.